Questions for reflection. In our first reading from the prophet Ezekiel, the Lord promises, "I'm going to display the holiness of my great name, which has been profaned among the nations, which you have profaned among them. And the nations will know that I am Yahweh, declares the Lord Yahweh, when in you I display my holiness before their eyes." This was and still is his plan, both for Israel of old and for the new Israel, the church of his Son. We are called to live our lives in such a way that the world comes to believe that there is a God who has made himself known and calls all men and women to himself. He's called us all into his church. He's washed us new in the waters of baptism and given us a new heart. He's put his very spirit into us. Do we believe this? Do we live it? If we do believe this, our psalm response helps us to understand our mission. We're called to sing out his praise to the nations and to rebuild his church. We're called to joyfully proclaim the message of the good news of Jesus Christ and draw all men and women to his cross and his resurrection. In our gospel passage today, Matthew 22, 1-14, Jesus uses a parable to speak to our hearts. In the biblical language, remember, the heart's not simply the organ at the center of our chest, but it's that place deep within where we make our most fundamental choices about life. He tells us that the kingdom of heaven may be likened to a king who gave a wedding feast for his son. He dispatched his servants to summon the invited guests to the feast, but they refused to come. A second time, he sent other servants, saying, "Tell those invited, behold, I've prepared my banquet. My calves and fattened cattle are killed, and everything is ready. Come to the feast." It's not accidental that the Bible, from beginning to end, uses marriage as a metaphor and a symbol to reveal the plan of God for the whole human race. Marriage was God's plan from the beginning, as we see in the first book of Genesis. Throughout the Old Testament, the Lord speaks through his messengers to remind Israel that he has espoused her to himself. Then, in the fullness of time, he sent the bridegroom, Jesus, his only son, to initiate the new Israel, the church, through his saving incarnation, life, and redemptive death. At the cross, he espoused himself to the church, which is now his bride. This wedding language informs the entirety of the New Testament, culminating with the wedding feast of the Lamb in the last book of the Bible, the book of Revelation, which opens the portal of the mystery to reveal God's plan fulfilled in eternity. And this is the mystery to which the Apostle Paul points in his letters to the early churches. At the end of his profoundly important instruction about marriage to the early church in Ephesians 5, he opens the mystery up with this line, quote, "This is a profound mystery, but I'm talking about Christ and the church." That's Ephesians 5:32. There'll be no giving or taking in marriage in the kingdom to come, because the very purpose and meaning of marriage will be fulfilled. You can see that in Mark 12:18-27. We'll be living in the fullness of the communion of love with the Trinity, and the symbol will give way to the eternal reality. The sacrament will be fulfilled in the fullness of communion. All of human love will be completed in the love which lasts forever. We've all been invited to the wedding feast of the Lamb. Revelations 19. How are we living our lives in response? Has this fundamental truth about the meaning and purpose of life informed the way we live every day? Are we preparing ourselves for the eternal wedding day? It's in this context that the final lines of this parable should be so sobering and motivating. And I quote, "But when the king came in to meet his guest, he saw a man there not dressed in a wedding garment. He said to him, 'My friend, how is it that you came in here without a wedding garment?' But he's reduced to silence. Then the king said to his attendants, 'Bind his hands and feet and cast him into the darkness outside, where there will be wailing and grinding of teeth.'" Many are invited, but few are chosen.